Recording. All right, guys, I'm going to start in about 1 minute. All right, guys, I'm going to get started. So today we're going to talk about programming. And this is going to be, I think, one of many talks about programming. There's no way I could really fit it all in one session, and I would probably get too detailed. So just to stay hyper focused on like what the main goal is, we're going to keep it short. And then based on the questions that I get and some of the responses, I'll kind of alter the next few to include some programming and philosophy and things like that. So as you guys know, today is Kobe's birthday. And for me, Kobe was a major influence in my life. Just growing up, I watched every single game. I was a Sixers fan originally, so I watched Allen Iverson. And at first, I hated Kobe because we could never beat him in the finals. So I just kept trying to understand like why like Allen couldn't guard him or whatever it was like, and then I started to realize the greatness in Kobe, and I started to really like fall in love with his game and his approach to it and his mindset. So I became a huge Kobe fan, and I always dreamed of working for him. And then 2018, I actually got the opportunity to work with Kobe Bryant in the Mamba Sports Academy, and we did a couple combines together and learned a lot and got a chance to meet with Kobe a few times, and it was amazing. So it was just a great experience. So, that's a major influence on why I'm as intense and focused as I am now. I'm extremely, extremely, extremely just like intense. So when I deal with pain, I kind of channel it into my work. Like I just lost my best friend this past week, and I was probably the most productive work week I've had in a long time because I was able to channel that positive or negative into success. So that's something that I learned from Kobe, and it's just always with me. So my goal is I want to change the way people view speed, and I want to help more people and change more lives. Last week I kind of went into how boxing helped shape that, and my accident helped shape some of that as far as my relatability to struggle and ability to meet people halfway and help them get better. And speed for me is that bridge, and I just want to change more lives. So one way that we're changing lives is actual physical improvement. So 20% our athletes using our digital programs, so a 20% change in horizontal force, 15 in horizontal power, and a 0.2, 0.3 difference in sprint times. And that's just digital. So that's like not in person. They're just doing our drills online, using our app, and working out, doing that. Nothing else. For coaches, we want to set up testing days or Zooms to discuss our system. We just developed some new technology. It's pretty incredible. So if you're a coach on here, I'd love the chance to show it to you and talk to you about it, and see if we can work together in some way. For parents, if you're a parent on here, there's 3 ways for your kids to get into our programs. Sign your athletes up on the app, join the academy, or just come to a testing day. I just had a kid come down for testing on Saturday, drove 6 hours, spent 2 hours here, drove back. But from that, he got an 8-week program, so I don't have to see him again for 8 weeks. For athletes, the best thing you could do is join our academy. Second best would be to test and see where you're at. And third would be to train on the app. If you can do all those things, it's even better. But at least one of those. So previously we discussed balancing the technical and physiological adaptations. I told you beginning of my career, I was heavily focused on the technical side and less focused on the physiological side. Now, later on in my career, I'm focused on balancing those two depending on which part of the programming we're in. And I'll explain kind of what that looks like also. Second, we talked about the importance of acceleration. And acceleration to us is how long does it take to reach your peak velocity, and how efficient is that? So we talked about how to train that. We talked about what it is. And we talked about, just all the different ways to improve acceleration. And third is how improvements in horizontal power led to a split time reduction. So that means how do we change the horizontal power profile in players, and how did that lead to a split time reduction? So we've talked about that the past couple of weeks. So jumping into it, this is 2019's programming, and it still reigns true today. So I'll use a lot of examples from previous programs. So leading into the 2019 draft class, I had 28 guys in front of me that I was coaching, and I had 5 that were training elsewhere that I was doing programming for. Number one, I wanted to develop force. So that's both horizontal and vertical. So that's resultant for force, total force. 2 is overload the technical components. This is training for the combine. So the 40 is a very technical thing. For team sports, it's not always as technical, but for me in this instance, it was very technical. And 3 is accelerate the learning. So I have an 8-week period to teach everyone how to run fast, how to maintain that speed, how to warm up, and then be independent so they can apply it on their own. Another goal was increasing relative strength along with mobility. So for me at this point in my career, I viewed strength as a way to increase force, and I viewed the technical part was a way to apply the force. And there's a little bit of a bridge there now for me with resisted running and individual profiles, but it's relatively the same thing. So this was a goal when I looked at before I even got into programming. Next is my learning environment. So I wanted to design a program for learning, like a culture. I wanted to teach them. So it wasn't just about me coming in and saying, hey, this is what I want you to do. I wanted to teach them why. So I set up, weekly video reviews where we go over everyone's runs. We'd have, other athletes breaking their runs down, and we discuss and we try to figure out what exactly do we see and how do we apply it. It's all about, and for us, it was all about how do we refine the motor system with proper feedback. So how do you give athletes feedback through video? So visual, auditory, like what cues, and kinesthetic, what progressions are we using to create learning? And if it wasn't one of those 3 things, we weren't using it. So it was either a video breakdown, and we use coach's eyes or kinograms. Auditory, so what are the cues that I want you to think about when you're driving out of the 3-point stance? Or kinesthetic, so what are the progressions or regressions we're creating in our programming to decide what to put next? Our goal is to optimize their learning, and we don't want to overload them with too many words or too many progressions or regressions. We want to find the balance. So it's all about learning for us. It's like my mom was a school teacher, so I spent a lot of time studying how she made lesson plans. And this is the same exact thing. So before I even get into the programming, I wanted to think about what kind of culture do I want to create. So once I get into the actual meat and potatoes of this programming, what I want to do is I want to think about, number one, how much time do I have? Let's say I have 8 weeks. What do I want to do first? So for me, what I wanted to do was I want to overload the skill part of sprinting. So for me, the skill is mastering the posture, arm action, leg action. Okay. And then from there, developing power. The specificity as far as the 3-point stance, how to finish, how to transition. For me, that's later on in the process. So the beginning, I want to build the most general things. I want to build more drills into the programming, more power-based stuff into the programming, more plyos into the programming. And as I get more specific, it starts to look more just like running. So in the beginning of the training block, it's a lot of time on drills. It's a lot of time on, slower learning, teaching type stuff. And towards the end, it looks like warm up, a few runs, go home. So it just happens over time. But this whole period is 8 weeks. Sometimes your period is 3 months. So it all depends on what your training block looks like. Okay, so now getting into the schedules. So when I look at the total training block, now I have to break it down to smaller components. So this is a training block that I took from 2018 with our NFL Combine group. So as you can see, there's a ton of components they have to do. Everything red was me, essentially, in black. So that's speed and that's strength. So everything that I did had to be built around when and where they're doing certain components. So if you look at Monday, on Monday, the first thing, the most important thing to me, which I talked about last week, was acceleration. So I wanted to put that early in the week. Next, we had a couple of top quarterbacks go in the first round. So we wanted to build around their skill learning for quarterback. As we move through the day, we look at lower body strength on that same day. To us, it's the same nervous system requirement as acceleration. So we wanted to pair it up with that. And I'll go into that more throughout the next couple Zoom sessions. On Tuesday, this is a little bit lower intensity day. So they're doing their route trees, running routes. They're doing their specific work for the combine, which is like the 5-10-5 and the L drill, and then upper body strength. Wednesday is recovery in pool. Thursday was max velocity. So another big priority. We're also incorporating acceleration into that. And then lower body again. And then Friday was combine work again. So 5-10-5, some starts. But that's the least of our priorities. Learning the 5-10-5 and the L drill for us was very, very, very simple. And then upper body again. So what we tried to do was balance. This is a high-low or high-medium-low, high-medium-low programming. So we wanted to separate the high-intensity programs by at least 48 hours. And in this case, we separated them by 72 hours because of everything else that they're doing training-wise. So although we could have done another speed session by Wednesday, we had to separate it by another day because a lot of the guys were running routes on Tuesday. They weren't really recovering. So we wanted them to be as fresh as possible for our speed sessions. We didn't want them to get into our speed sessions and be fatigued in any way, both from a muscular system wise or nervous system wise. So separating them was huge just to keep them progressing, but also to keep them healthy. Next, getting into what the actual programming looks like. So for acceleration, what I would do is I would build out an entire 8-week plan for acceleration with boundaries. So I'd say, okay, I know in the beginning I want to teach more drills. So week 1 and 2, I'm going to teach all the drills. But now I need to load them. So if you look at weeks 3 and 4 on the vertical drills, I'm going to start adding in some overhead. Then I'm going to start adding in some med ball overhead. So I progress them through loading. Horizontal drills for us was a teaching component. So we're teaching them how to actually apply force horizontal. So that doesn't change a ton. It just kind of we cycle drills in and out. Third is resisted. So harness for us, it's march bound or run patterns. So there's always a resisted march, resisted bound, or resisted run in the program. We started off with shoulder harness the first 2 weeks. And the reason why is because we teach athletes how to unload their body weight. So they don't have to control their trunk. And then we progress to waist, and we progress to heavier percentage to lower percentage body weight. Then we go to transfer drills, which is just basic patterns on where the step length should be when you're running. And then free sprints. So pretty simple outline. This was 2018. It's changed a lot, but the general programming from vertical, horizontal, harness, transfer, and free stays the same. For max velocity, very simple, same thing. vertical drills are our regular drills, plus we're adding in more specific max velocity drills. So teaching them how to simultaneously bend the knee and the hip together, starting out very simple and then progressing to longer, more overhead plus loading. Horizontal drills are pretty much always in there. Wicket drills, which I'll get into. Overspeed dribbles, like I did that in 2018. We don't do much of it anymore. Sled drills you'll see are a lot lighter percentage-wise, so 10 to 15% body weight. And really, we don't always use body weight. Sometimes it's just 10 to 15% velocity decrement, which means like we take their max velocity and figure out the percentage on the sled that'll have them run 90% of their max speed. So close enough, but not actually there. And then you'll see our fly sprints. Acceleration sample. So this would be like a typical day. You'll have your vertical drills. You'll have your horizontal drills with the wall. Arm drills, not always in there, but sometimes. Directly to our shoulder harness, march bound, run. Then we'll get into the tape drill, which is more specific transfer. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of a stimulus. But the entire session is 3 by 5 yards, 2 by 10 yards. This is like one of the first workouts we would do. So there's not a ton of running, but there's a lot of teaching, a lot of body awareness things. For max velocity, you'll see pretty similar on this, not a lot of volume. So you'll see drills, wall drills, wickets are running. So they're running over those stride lengths. So starting at 5'11", and then you'll see time 30-yard sprints, flying 30s, which was really not much of a fly, and then build ups. So not a lot of volume there either. So the most difficult thing is setting the program. And right now, like what we've done is just even for myself, just for programming, what I've done is I've transferred everything to our app. It makes it super simple. So I no longer have to really think about what goes where, what goes here. Like every time I start somebody at a program, I start them on the same day in the beginning, where there's more teaching, less running. And then I progress them to more volume, to more loading, to more running, those types of things. So that's something we've already put in, and I'll show you guys here. So in our dream program, we have 17 weeks. So I'm going to go through a couple workouts here so you can see the way that I program this, and you can kind of see the flow. So you see in the first series 1, this will just be your general warm-up, so thermogenic. And I'm going to get as detailed as possible on these workouts because I think it's important to understand the order of why we do things in the order we do. So you'll see our jog, back pedal, shuffle, karaoke. So all we're trying to do is elevate the heart rate. Next, we'll go into our ground mobility phase. So you'll see rolling V's. I'll show you this. So opening up the hips, hamstring, lower back. Okay. You'll see some hamstring work in here.
That don't kill me.
You'll see some activation, some ground activation in here also.
Wow. Sounds like him.
So after we warm the body up, we go down to the ground. Next, we'll go to standing, and we'll go to dynamic mobility. So you'll see like side lunges are one. So now a little bit more moving, keeping the heart rate up a little bit, opening everything up. Okay, then we'll go into the next part is super important. So now we'll go into neural activation. So after we do the thermogenic and the ground mobility, we can assume that everyone's brain is still asleep. We're still waking up right now. So what we try to do is try to excite the nervous system to get it firing. It's not about how technical it is. There's nothing to do with I'm not even coaching as far as technical points other than stay tall, but I'm not really concerned about that. All I want them to do is excite their nervous system. So you'll see this one. You might see some ugly reps in here. So I'm just trying to turn my brain on, turn my muscles on. Everything we do is controlled by our central nervous system. So if we can get our central nervous system to fire, we're primed and ready to run fast. Okay. Next, we're going to our A series. So this is our vertical series that I talked about before. So this is teaching the posture that we want, the arm action that we want, the leg action that we want, because it's so much easier to teach when you're moving slow here, because I can slow everything down and say, no, I really think your hip should be here. Your foot should land like this. That's impossible to do when you're moving 9 to 10 meters per second and running. So I want to teach everything moving slow like this. Each drill gets a little bit more difficult, and both in intensity and technique. Now, if you see me do something wrong, it's because I'm getting old. More and more complex as we go. Each drill will look closer to running. Okay, and I'll go into why we do these drills in a couple weeks. So the specificity is now up. So now we're looking at, these are horizontal drills. So teaching them how to apply force behind their center of gravity and how to push the ground away. Okay, so you'll see a resisted march. You'll see resisted bound. Okay, now the next part, we just loaded them. So it's a physiological response here, marches, bounds. Okay, now we're gonna look at slowing it down and go into our next technical part, which is our wall series. So in the wall series in the beginning, we're teaching the posture and the angles. So this is the entire drill right here. All he's doing is maintaining this posture. Can he keep his core tight? Can he keep his body in one line? It's actually harder than it looks. Then we progress to single leg. Same thing. The isometric part builds strength, but it also builds neurological pathways and myelinates the movement that we want. So it's essentially coding the neuromuscular system with, this is where I want your thigh. This is where I want you to be. Okay, then we start getting more and more specific as we go. So everything that we do ends up looking more like running without actually running. Okay. Once we go through here, now we start getting to some of the actual running drills. So we're still not saying run full speed. We're still patterning the neuromuscular system for what we want. So this is called our 4-step. You'll see this a lot in our programming. So can you hit back at each cone? So you'll see the stride length build over time. Okay, then towards the end, you'll see sprints. So 10-yard sprints, 20-yard sprints, 4 10s, 4 20s. That's all it takes. Okay, so in this program, in the beginning, is a high level of what we called skill blocks in the beginning. So not a ton of running. Okay. So now I'll go into what a day 2 looks like. I'll kind of speed through this. So same warm-ups here. And now we're still teaching the technique, but now we do something called tempo. So we use a hill in the beginning because there's less eccentric stress on the body. And these don't have to be incredibly fast. These are just building up the capacities to handle more volume. So on this day, 4 sets of 5 reps. We're doing 20 hills. All right, next. we'll look at a recovery day. So recovery day, we program pretty much every shoulder, hip, knee, ankle thing that we can on here just to reset the body from all the stress that we had. Okay. Then day 4, it's a top speed day. So you'll see a little bit different on this. We'll see more dribbles on this side. Some more cyclical patterns. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. So on this day, we'll see more cyclical patterns. So dribbles from ankle, dribble to calf, dribble to knee. See more cycles. You'll see more fly runs. Okay, and then you'll also see hills in here. Now these hills are different. We're talking about full speed hills on this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, and then lastly, I'll show you day 5. Day 5 is interesting. So day 5 is we're kind of taking a little bit of everything from the week. So you'll see in the drills, you'll have your A series, but you'll also have the dribble series. You also have a high volume of straight leg bounds. So this is like a work day, capacity day, but it's all drills and everything is double the distance. So you'll see the triples are 20 yards, the knee dribbles are 20 yards, dribble bleeds are 20 yards. Everything's longer and with shorter rest. So you'll see this one straight leg bound to dribble. All right. So essentially, that's pretty much it. The program, we have 2 different programs. We have a 4-week power phase. We have a dream program. The 4-week power phase is a newer one. The dream is 17 weeks long. So everything I just explained as far as programming is already in here. We have a ton of workouts on here. Every day, Monday through Friday for 17 weeks. So everything progresses. So we wave load, and I'll go through that, what that means. Like we start off intense, more intense, extremely intense, and then we back off for a week and then set a new 3-week block. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna let you guys ask any questions that you have about programming or about how to implement it into your systems. How do you determine the length? The cone length and distance. So I've always judged it by eye for the 4 and 7 stride drills, but you have a more precise method. Yeah, so I mean, one way you can do is the harder way is to measure their hip height and then times that by, I think it's 1.2. And that'll give you like their max stride length, but it's not necessary. I would just do, for 4, the distances are 1 yard. So I actually put it in here. It's super simple. All I did was take Vince Anderson's chart. So I'll put his name in there in the chat. And then I'll give you the lengths. You guys have any other questions on that stuff? Okay. If you have someone very strong, very vertical displacement in power cleans, power snatches, and jerk, and big squat and deadlift, but hard for them to get in the horizontal projection. So you'll see people that have a very good bar speed on power clean and strength and snatches and jerks and incredible squats. You'll see them have incredible 5-yard split times. So in fact, at the Olympics, at one point they were doing a ton of testing on all the athletes that got there as intake, and everyone ran a 10-meter split. And the lifters, weightlifters had a very similar split time to Olympic track athletes. But they lose that force very fast because it goes vertical very fast because they're used to being vertical. So a way to go from vertical to horizontal is resisted. So in our app, like we have a ton of resisted running. That's our base. And in that 17-week program, like really that's a base model. Like I would use that for preseason. And then the 4-week power phase, I would use it for like a higher level athlete that's now gotten better and is going to implement that like actual resisted training program. How much resisted on sled bounds and what do you do for ankle stiffness? Jack, so resisted bounds, I go extremely light. Like the only reason I want resistance is I want them to think push and horizontal, and then just make the movement a little bit harder. But I would say like if it was a percentage body weight, not more than like 20 or 30% body weight. Ankle stiffness, we do a ton of pogos. Altus has a ton of articles about pogos, and they call it rudiment. So ankle stiffness drills in that, plus a lot of barefoot walks. And then stiffness like is a product of how much force we're creating and then how we deliver that. So if there's a weakness in the ankle, if there's a weakness in the foot, try to address that. That's more of a PT's job. So try to balance out our programming with what we're good at, and then what we're not good at, we're going to push to someone else to help out, like a PT. How is balanced weight training in terms of balancing fatigue? So how is balanced weight training in terms of balancing fatigue? Sean, send me that again. I'm not sure I understand. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, how do I incorporate speed with weight training? Is that the question? Just, yeah, let me know. And then power output monitoring as far as like internal, like EMG. We're starting to. There's a company called Strive that I'm playing around with, or Athos, which I used in the past. I've used NordBoard the past year, so looking at muscle impulse, so how much force they're producing in what amount of time. But yeah, that's like another 20-minute answer, but yes, we are. How much weight to sled toes? Depends. So if you're trying to improve power, horizontal power, and you're looking to increase acceleration ability, it's going to be heavy, between 60 and 100% body weight, depending on where your peak power lies. But I would say you can be safe and say that every athlete will improve acceleration with heavier percentage body weight on the sled. So 70% probably, 80% is solid. How do I balance levels of fatigue that build up between sessions? Weights and sprinting are both heavy CNS. So how do you balance it? Oh, yeah. Okay. So that comes along with the entire programming. So the frequency or density of high intensity sessions is determined by what type of athlete and how much time I have. So for football, I really separate them. I go Monday, Thursday as our high intensity days. And then I literally monitor every other variable. So I stack the highest central nervous system output early or after a rest day. So Monday, they have 2 days of rest, Saturday, Sunday, before Monday. So it's good for a high output day. And then Thursday, they're coming off a Wednesday recovery day. And then so Tuesday and Friday, therefore, become a lower intensity day by nature. Hopefully it stays that way, but sometimes they do too much. But with the weight room, like the upper body stuff, like even if you do maximal upper body, it's still like a 30% central nervous system requirement to what a max squat would be. So you're not overly taxing them by being heavy in the weight room on upper body days. It's more so the lower. So that's why we stack those together. So if I were to go sprint Monday, lower body heavy Tuesday, my nervous system never gets a break. I'm just turning that thing on the whole time. So I'd rather stack those together so that Wednesday by Tuesday, Wednesday, those become recovery sessions so that Thursday I can have a high output again. Did that answer your question? What do I adjust, if anything, for athletes coming off of injury where they couldn't do speed work but are cleared by PT? Volume, different drills. So usually what I do is if an athlete's coming off injury and we're trying to get them back to speed is hopefully we tested them before at some point, and hopefully we tested them in some force velocity capabilities, because athletes returning from injury will usually have the same velocity capabilities, meaning that they could reach the same speeds, but in different amounts of time. So they lose their force capabilities. So they're not able to produce the same amount of force in the same amount of time to improve their acceleration. So they end up taking longer to get up to speed. So what I would do in the beginning with the return to play athlete is I would have heavier resistive loads in the beginning of their program. So I would have 50% plus velocity decrement on a sled. So that could be 80 to 90% body weight, and have them work on their peak power capabilities, their force capabilities. And then as they improve, as they get stronger, as their other variables come back, I'll start reducing the amount on the sled so they can handle higher velocities. But they have to be able to prove that they can handle higher velocities. So one way of showing that is if they're running and they're supposed to be at 50% of their max velocity and they're running with a sled that's keeping them at that 50%, but they're actually running a lot faster than that, and that shows, okay, they're ready to jump up to the next velocity phase and they can handle a little bit more velocity, so a little bit lighter sled. Let me see what else. And then volume. So yeah, volume, I would do more drilling. So along with that, I would do a ton of ankle dribbles and then build up to the point where they could do knee dribbles. So from a technical standpoint, I want their technical capabilities to progress. And I would do high volume of ankle dribbles in the beginning, and then eventually get to a low volume of higher dribbles, like above the knee and bleeding. What are the new exciting things you've been working on that you hinted at the start of the call? And the truck is looking clean. Thanks, bro. Yeah, so what I've been working on, and really just like it's kind of my life's work, but I've always been into profiling and looking at comparison data and things like that. And now we have a way of capturing the force velocity data in a much faster way and with multiple people at once. So before it was one at a time, a team of 30 would take an hour and a half. Now we can do it instantaneously with multiple people. So it's a really cool project we're working on. We're profiling as many athletes as we can, but I'll go over it with Zoom on a Zoom call with you. It's pretty dope. So in determining the weight on the sled pulls, would you be basing off the full depth squat to body weight ratio? No. So I would not. So based on the full depth squat to body weight ratio, 2 times body weight, optimal squat in this range would be 80% on sled toes. No. So there is not really a correlation with high level athletes in top like sprint times with like a squat. There's not. There is in like 0 to 5 or maybe up to 10 yards or meters, but not overall. So what we're determining the sled pulls off of is force velocity profiling, but the horizontal profile. So we're analyzing their peak velocity, their peak force, their peak power. Then we're determining where their peak power is. And then once we normalize it to their body weight, we're figuring out what resistance on a sled would equal that peak power range. And then we're training them on that. So we're not correlating it to squat or anything like that. But generally, most athletes are going to be in that like 60 to 90 to 100% body weight range. So most athletes actually fall like 70, 80% body weight. So if you have an athlete who has a really solid first step projection what goes vertical in step 2, 3, 4? Would sleds be the easiest fix, or be a technical cueing issue? It'd be both. It depends. If an athlete has a really solid first step projection but goes vertical, that means they didn't have a good first step. Because if they have a good first step, they had a good switch, and it's almost, once you have a good switch, it's almost impossible to slow down. Like you literally topple over and fall. So if they have a bad 2, 3, and 4, that means they didn't have a first good step. But let's say they just, for some reason, had a really good step and had a really bad 2, 3, 4. It's probably technical. But if not, yeah, I would combine sleds and technical anyway. So yeah, absolutely. What other questions you guys got? We got 42 minutes, probably one more question. Anybody? One more? How do I coach the switch? So good question. So I coach it in 3 ways. First, vertically. So can you vertically switch your thigh? Second is on a wall. Can you switch on a wall or a sled? Third would be if I lay out a cone and put it at 1 yard, so you have to project 1 yard. Can you switch so your foot lands behind your hip? That would be a solid switch. And then when let's say my right foot is back and my right foot touches the ground again, my left foot should be coming through already. So that's how I define a switch, is how quickly that thigh comes through. Am I working hills and sled pulls in the same week? Yeah, I definitely. The original program I put on there is really simple. There's not a ton of volume of running on those days, like Monday and Thursday. So as we get more volume running, the hills will start to disappear. But in the beginning, it's like I said, pretty technical. But I would not do a ton of sled work and a ton of hill work in the same week. We'll have varying degrees, but you can do it in the same week. The sled pulls, the most we program is like 6 maybe, and the hills are all tempo based. So this is assuming they're not doing a ton of team sport practice or anything like that. So if they're running hills, that is their conditioning, that is their metabolic stuff. So they can handle it. Yep. And no, it's not necessarily stride length focused for hills. Like I don't coach at all in terms of technique on the hill. Just get to the top, just work. It's just work capacity. And they have to continue to push to get up a hill. So no matter what they do, you can't do it wrong to get up a hill. If they do it wrong, they're not going to get to the top of the hill. So I'm not trying to overcoach or like overcomplicate what the outcome is. There is no technical outcome from running hills like on this day, because it's not fast, number one. And number two, I'm not trying to cue them to be technical. I just want them to run. And, this is the physiological part. I want them to get some actual running in without overstressing them with the eccentric stress of running flat. That was a good question, though. Any more? All right, guys. Well, if you have any other questions, just feel free to reach out, hit me, DM me. I just got a new YouTube channel going, so I'll send you guys that. Actually, look at my Instagram in like 10 minutes because I'm about to post it right now. All right, guys. Peace.